Reincarnation, the beliefs and proof. Reincarnation is defined as the rebirth of a soul in a new body. When you die, your soul lives on. It enters a new body here on earth for another lifetime. Many religions have the belief of reincarnation. Most of these religions are considered Eastern religions. They are some of the oldest known religions on earth, and they all originated in India. There are Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, and Jains, to name a few. Many Western religions do not believe in the concept of reincarnation. In their religions, when a person dies, the soul goes on to live in heaven or hell for all of eternity. They have had a hard time wrapping their heads around the idea of a soul living another life here on earth. They have not previously been exposed to this idea, so they dismiss it as myth or legend. Buddhist beliefs of reincarnation. The Buddhist beliefs of reincarnation include the topics of karma and nirvana, with the perfect example of Buddhist reincarnation being the Dalai Lama. The old saying, "What goes around comes around," stems from the belief in karma. All actions incur karma, whether they be good, bad, physical, verbal, or mental. Michael Coogan tells us in his book, Eastern Religions, that a person is born to experience the results of their actions from previous lives. In Michael Coogan's book, Eastern Religions, he describes nirvana as enlightenment, neither suffering, desire, nor sense of self, and the subject is released from the effects of karma. This means that once a person can disconnect themselves from earthly desires, they will no longer have any restraints and they will attain nirvana. When a person breaks the cycle of karma, that is attaining nirvana. This is the ultimate goal of Buddhists. The Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a Tibetan Buddhist monk and spiritual leader that is said to be the reincarnated Giden Drub. Giden Drub was considered the very first Dalai Lama. He passed away in 1474. 2 years later, in 1476, a child named Sangji Chofel was born. The child spoke flawlessly about his past life as Giden Drub. Of course, there were many people who had doubts, so they put the child through many tests to see if he was in fact the first Dalai Lama. Since then, they have come up with several different tests for each of the new Dalai Lamas to see if they are who they say they really are. One of the ways they can tell is by the predictive letters of the predecessor. If this person is in fact the Dalai Lama, they will prove the information in these letters true. Also, the reliability of the story of the previous life of the Dalai Lama is put to test. The new Dalai Lama will be able to recognize people that he was close to or belongings that he once had. Predictions from oracles that they received in a trance also help predict the new reincarnated person that is the Dalai Lama. Visions were given to them in sacred lakes. The scientific proof of reincarnation. Dr. Ian Stevenson was a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia School of Medicine for over 50 years. Dr. Stevenson started investigating stories of reincarnation in 1960 and continued for over 40 years. He investigated over 2,500 cases all over the world. Dr. Stevenson found that the children were all of a certain age. They all started speaking of their past lives around age 2 to 3 years. The children would stop remembering their past lives usually around 8 to 10 years old. The children would talk of places they lived, how they died, their relatives, and different events of the lives they previously lived. When investigating, the children would have birthmarks that coincided with injuries they had in their past lives. They would inherit traits, facial features, or phobias that stem from their past lives. Dr. Stevenson and his team did tests to see if what the child said matched to a life of a person that had previously died. They would go to the city or village with the child, and they would point out specific places, dates, and even events that occurred in those locations in the previous life. Dr. Stevenson conducted his investigations in a very scientific manner, writing in an academic style, providing witnesses, lie detector tests, and having witnesses sign affidavits. That way he kept his material as professional as he could. James Leininger was a boy from Louisiana that at the age of 2 began to speak of a past life as a World War II fighter pilot named James Houston Jr. He spoke of specific details of the past life with events, names, and even his death. He spoke of the boat he flew from during the war. When he saw a picture of Iwo Jima, he said that this was the place where his plane was shot down. He gave extremely specific details of his time in the military, including the name of his close friend and fellow fighter pilot, Jack Larson. This person was not only proved to be on the same ship as James Houston, but is still alive today. Barbro Carlin. Barbro Carlin was born in Sweden in 1954. At the age of 2, she started telling her parents that her name was not Barbro, but Anne Frank. There was no way for her to know who Anne Frank was because the diary of Anne Frank was not yet translated in Sweden. She insisted to her parents that they were not her real parents and that one day soon her real father would come for her. At the age of 10, they went on a trip to Amsterdam. When they were going to catch a cab to go to the Anne Frank house, she repeatedly told them that they did not need one because they were not far away. She walked them through the winding streets of Amsterdam directly to the house. Upon arriving, she noticed that the stairs were different at the Anne Frank house. She told her parents, "They have changed those steps," which in fact did happen. She remembered the pictures that Anne Frank had on the walls, even though they were moved to be put in a glass case. She had the memories and talents of Anne Frank. She wrote books of poetry like Anne Frank and even slightly resembles her. Titu Singh. Titu Singh was 2 years old when he began to tell his parents about his past life in another city in India. He spoke in great detail of his life as an electronics store owner named Suresh Verma. He spoke of his wife, kids, and even his death. He told his parents he was homesick and even threatened to run away if they did not return him to his town. Dr. Stevenson went to India to meet with Titu and his family. They took him to the town where he said he once lived, and he was able to pick out the spot where his store was. They proved that it was owned by a man that was murdered named Suresh Verma. They also met with Suresh's wife. After meeting with his wife, he was able to tell her about specific details of his life that only she would know, like where he buried gold in their house. They took Titu to a playground full of children and told him to pick out the kids that he thought were his from his past life. He picked out the correct children of Suresh Verma. Titu has a birthmark and round indentation on the side of his head that coincides with the place where Suresh was shot. Regardless of all the scientific proof that Dr. Stevenson collected and presented in the most academic and professional manner, his data was still ignored by mainstream science, with the exception of a few notable scientists like Eugene Brody. Dr. Jim Tucker discussed this in his essay called Ian Stevenson and the Cases of the Reincarnation Type. This essay was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration. Over half the population on Earth believe in reincarnation. whether this stemmed from their religious background or from information they attained throughout their lifetime. That's over 3.7 billion people that believe in this concept. Dr. Ian Stevenson and many others have done extensive research to prove that this concept is in fact real. With all the information that has been presented, do you believe?